Welcome to the Double R Show, the podcast that features everything about North Lincoln County. The Double R Show, directed and produced by Paul Robertson and hosted by the voice of Lincoln City, Roger Robertson.
Podcast number one, our first guest is State Representative David Gomberg, a gentleman that I've known for a lot of years, long before you became state representative.
Oh, my goodness, Roger. Well, first of all, let me say that it's a pleasure and an honor to be your very first guest here. And yeah, you and I go back a good 35 years. Not our first time recording together, but I think the first time is when you were actually doing local news here in Lincoln City for what was then Channel 10.
Yep, TV 10, as we watched the numbers slide off the wall.
Well, that was a long, long, long time ago.
Session just ended, but David, during the course of the session, you made this statement, and I've heard you make it several times. It was either going to be the best or the worst. What was it?
You know, at the end, it was pretty darn good.
Okay.
But there was a time when we weren't sure that anything was going to happen. We were in the House every day working. We met, we debated, we amended, we voted, and we sent bills over to the Senate. The Senate just couldn't seem to come to a working relationship with each other, and so a third of them walked out. They just left the building, refused to participate in the floor sessions, and that meant that nothing was happening over there. It meant that no bills were passing, and so by the time we got to the middle of June, there were more than 300 bills backed up in the Senate waiting for a vote. And these are bills dealing with our budget, deals dealing with our economy, bills dealing with critically important issues like homelessness, housing, health care, funding for our schools, developing our economy. All that stuff was bottled up. And at the end of the day, passed out in the last 72 hours.
Tough.
Well, you know, and we're sitting in the House watching the bills that we'd worked on for months and years, waiting to see whether they were going to be able to come to a compromise and eventually a consensus that allowed them to come to the floor and to do the state's business.
Did there come a time during the course of that period that you wanted to say to heck with it?
Well, no, I always had confidence in the Senate, confidence in the process, confidence in the people there.
Why?
Well, look, I understand the walkouts. I don't like them. I don't support them, but I understand that there are issues that are so important to each of us that we would use any tool available to advance them or to stop them. I mean, that's what the walkouts are about. In the last 5 years, we've had 7 walkouts about climate change, about COVID regulations, about redistricting, about school taxes. And this year it was about abortions, guns, and whether or not an 8th grader can read legislation and understand what it says. That's what the walkout was about this time. The question is, should we allow tools to be available that a small group of people can shut down the entire process because they're not happy about 1 or 2 contentious bills? And my answer to that is no. And I think that that's where reasonable people land, and that they were going to come together at some point and call off this obstructionist effort and get back in and get the work done. Now, at the end of the session, they were moving at what I call lightning speed. They were running bills at about every 3 to 4 minutes to get everything done. That's not good governing.
That's really not good government.
Well, it's not debate. It's not rational thinking. I mean, look, all of these bills have been through committees. They've been voted on in the House. It's not that they weren't vetted. It's just that banging them out one after another to get through the backlog is not the best way to handle government. And that's a disappointment.
The session brought home a lot of money to the district, or you brought home a lot of money to the district again. And it does make a significant difference. Talk about some of those crowning developments that are coming home to Lincoln County and to your entire district.
Well, you know, we've done well here. We've done well. Last time around, people will notice that we got money for the cultural center and the work that's being done at the plaza. We got money for a new welcome center at the D River. We got money for the new park in Taft. That's just here in Lincoln City. I mean, we also brought home for the port of Newport and money in Toledo for a new fire station and the docks in Depot Bay and water systems in Wellport. $70 million in the last 4 sessions. And this session, I think we repeated that success. You know, how do we do that? Well, you know, I'm using my seniority and my position in the legislature is co-chair of the Transportation Economic Development Committee and vice chair of Ways and Means. I'm using my experience and my knowledge of the process and a little bit of legislative guile, which is to say, let's actually ask for stuff. They're not going to give it to you if you don't ask for it. And once you ask for it, you've got to stay on board and keep working it from day one till the very last day. This time around, we've got the money that Depot Bay needed to finish repairing their docks. Those things are getting ready to fall apart. Their economy in that little town's going to collapse if their docks don't work. We got them the money to finish that job. We got money to connect the sewer system in Waldport to a set of new industrial lands so they can start building new businesses out there, including, by the way, the new animal shelter is supposed to be at that area. So we're going to make sure they put the animal shelter in. They're going to be able to flush the toilets.
Important.
We got money for Monroe and Philomath that are now part of my legislative district. All things that are critically important. And oh, by the way, we got bonding authority for the community college. $8 million in bonding authority. So they're going to be putting a measure on the local ballot asking for enough money to finish up that program and create a trades center teaching local students the skills they need for local jobs so they don't have to go somewhere else.
And there's many of those just begging to be filled.
Well, I mean, we hear that every day, how many hiring vacancies there are.
Certainly.
In everything from healthcare to construction to the police force. Yeah, we need more people locally. And you start addressing that by training people locally who want to stay here.
But to run out of time, I want to ask you the crowning point you think the most important piece of legislation that went through the House and Senate this past legislative year was what?
Well, I mean, you certainly got to point to big things like $1 billion more for public schools and trying to address housing and homelessness and behavioral health. I'm proudest of a project I put together with a group of rural legislators, both Democrats and Republicans, working together to address rural economic development. We're going to help small farmers. We're going to help the fishing community. We're going to help small businesses, outdoor recreation, county fairs. That was a $70 million package that we moved through the legislature. It passed the Senate on the final day. It's going to make a difference in local economies and local lives.
David, appreciate you being here. Our very first guest on our very first podcast. Again, congratulations on it. Good year just completed.
Just completed a day or so ago. And Roger, I look forward to being back with you.
David Gomberg, State Representative, has been our very first guest on the podcast. I had an opportunity to listen to him at the Chamber of Commerce luncheon on Tuesday. Talked about many of the same issues. And now you're back on the circuit, if you will, visiting all of the communities you represent.
Showing up with annoying frequency, Roger.
David Gomberg. We'll be back right after this.
Have an old or failing septic system?
Northwest Septic Service has innovative training and equipment that can rejuvenate failing septic systems for a fraction of the cost to replace it.
Northwest Septic Service drain field rejuvenation can extend the life of most septic systems, saving you thousands in replacement costs.
Go to northwestsepticservice.com or follow us on Facebook for the latest.
Northwest Septic Service, serving the Central Oregon coast and western Willamette Valley. Find them on Facebook and tell them Double R sent you.
Northwest Septic Service, innovative training and equipment.
I'm Adina Zeller. Zeller's is now in 2 North Lincoln County locations. The original Zeller's in Rose Lodge and now Zeller's in Lincoln City, formerly Maxwell's. Zeller's with great family food and kickin' fun like our line dancing. Just wait until you try our homemade clam chowder.
Our next guest on our very first inaugural podcast is State Senator Dick Anderson. Welcome.
Thank you, Roger. And very first, I appreciate it.
We have known each other for a lot of years, and it seems to me that in all of those years, your mainstay has been on housing. Is that a good assessment?
Good assessment. It remains to be. Even in the State Senate, I'm vice chair of the Senate Housing and Development Committee. So, yes, it's very, very important to me now. And when I was mayor and all my time in local city government in Lincoln City, even see the fruit of some of those efforts.
Where does it come from?
Where does what come from?
The desire for housing in working on those type of issues.
Sure. Primarily because that was my profession. When I say I worked for a paycheck, 35 years in the field of real estate finance. So it's always been around real estate, and in the later years, exclusively in housing and affordable or hard-to-place type housing for individuals. And then, really, I retired from that, relocated to Lincoln City, and as I got involved in local government, I started seeing the negative impact of not having enough housing, and I think that's prominent on the coast, not just in Lincoln City, but all types of housing, all price points, rent points, sales price levels. It's not healthy for a community, and certainly not healthy for businesses that are trying to recruit folks. And we've felt the effects here with whether it's the school district or the hospital, even the city, of not having housing available for people that they've attempted to bring into our area for employment.
We'll talk what happened in the last legislative session a little bit more in reference to housing. But the number overriding issue that you were hammered on all of the time, as was most Republicans, is the walkout. You didn't walk out.
I did not. And if I can, it's referred to in the press as a walkout. This one was much different than previous years. We actually referred to it as a pause because my fellow senators, Republican senators, actually were in the building most of the time. They did their committee work, so they attended committee meetings. They were involved in all areas except for the floor sessions, when actual bills would come to the floor and a vote was taken. Where previous years, they were just gone from the building and would be out and about. But for the 60-plus days, they were around. So, yes, I and one other senator, two of us were on the floor. I think in the 6 months, 160 days, I missed exactly 1 day out of that time from my Senate duties in Salem.
The pressure on you must have been just huge from both sides.
It was. I played a role, because one, I should clarify that I'm a deputy leader in the Senate Republican caucus. They voted me into that position at the start of the session, which I took as a real privilege because, to me, from that caucus, it showed, I think, a position of moderation that even my short tenure in the Senate and with them, they saw that I was available, made myself available, accessible to across the aisle, as you would say. So my role in this was to be on the floor, to, in essence, be the, hard for you to believe, Roger, but the pretty face, the good guy, bad guy.
Sure, I understand.
The leader, Senator Knopp, was clearly the bad guy, and I was on the floor as the good guy. That leadership, the Democratic leadership, the Senate president could access as communication. So there was a role there, and it was strategic as to what the caucus was doing.
Speaking of the caucus, you have a coastal caucus, correct?
Lots of caucuses. Coastal caucus is actually individuals, both chambers, House and Senate, senators and representatives, that have their districts that have a piece of the ocean. There are 7 of us. Interestingly, 6 Republicans and 1 Democrat out of that 7. But when we get together, it's a unique caucus because we primarily deal exclusively with ocean kind of things or things that impact the ocean. So it's easy for us to lock up and be agreeable on those kind of things. And when you think about, 7 people out of 90, that doesn't sound like much of a source or a force. But when you think about every one of those individuals are on different committees, different chambers, we're talking to a lot of people. And it has proven to be one of the older caucuses and the more reliable and persistent. And we've gotten actually quite a bit done. Everybody's got to agree. So all 7 of us have to agree on the issue before we get behind it. So it's been a good, strong caucus, and one that I think the whole coast has benefited from.
So what's next?
Well, I have spent my time in the Senate actually expanding on what I was working on and saw as mayor of Lincoln City all those years: housing, child care, the health cares, physical, mental, and behavioral, oral health, and education. Those kind of 4 areas have been my areas of, one, expertise, building on those, but really focus. And as we talked about earlier, I've done a lot with housing, continue to do a lot with housing, and we can talk about those things later. Childcare has been just as important, and actually I have a bill that's waiting on the governor's desk to sign, which will be a first in the nation type of pilot program specific for Oregon, but it's garnered a great deal of interest and attention that I'm kind of excited about.
We're going to have State Senator Dick Anderson back with us on our next podcast as well, and we'll talk specifically about some of the actions that were taken by the legislative session that just concluded. With us, State Senator Dick Anderson. We'll be back in just a moment. The busiest family in North Lincoln County, the Zeller family, correct, Adina?
Yes, that is true right now. We are very busy.
You have 2 restaurants. I mean, you got the Zellers out of Rose Lodge. You got Zellers here now in Lincoln City. That's a handful.
It is a handful, but I have a really good crew and good family, and we all work together and make it happen.
Making it happen food-wise, chowder is wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's homemade. We came up with a recipe out in our Rose Lodge location, and it's the same at both.
What are the things that are in common between the 2 restaurants?
We provide breakfast on Saturdays and Sundays in the Otis location. We actually have our clam chowder, our steaks, a lot of our breakfast items, and a lot of our dinner items. They're a lot the same, We got a little bit of country in everything, so we like the country style.
One of the things that happens here at Zeller's in Lincoln City is line dancing. Tell me about that.
Yeah, every Wednesday night, starting at 7 o'clock, it's free. We partner with Stephanie, and she comes in and teaches line dancing for an hour. And then afterwards, for about another hour, they get to practice what they learned, and it's it's a lot of fun. We're waiting for you to do it.
There we go. I'm kind of a rock and roll guy, though.
Well, we could put some on for you. Our music on Saturday nights, we get live music every weekend. Every Saturday night, we have a new band come in or one that people have previously loved. And some of them, they play anything from country all the way up into rock and roll. So we have a little bit of everything mixed in there.
You started out with a coffee shop. Now you've expanded to 2 restaurants. That's a lot of growth in, 2-3 years?
2.5 years. Yes. So we started off with a small coffee shop in Otis, and we thank God for that opportunity. And then it just grew into getting our Rose Lodge location. And lo and behold, we got lucky and got Maxwell, something that our families loved for many, many years.
Tell me about all of the family involved in Zeller's.
So my right-hand person is my son, Dean Zeller, and then my husband, Dean, and David. And then Charles, he's just part of it from a distance. He likes to taste the food. But everybody's put a lot of hard work into this place, and it wouldn't have happened without our employees. So they did a lot of work to put this new place together. We put a good, 3 or 4 days into it, and then I just opened right up.
It's a lot of work. It seems to be a lot of fun, and you enjoy it.
I absolutely do. I've done it all my life, and we're locals here, born and raised, so my family just loves to help the community and be around in the community.
It's Zeller's in Lincoln City and in Rose Lodge. Don't miss an opportunity for some of the best clam chowder going.
Thank you very much.
Mold, fire, biohazard, or water damage in Lincoln County? ServPro is your go-to solution. We specialize in fast, reliable restoration services. From fire damage to biohazard cleanup, we can handle it all. Call us today at 541-243-2946.
Art on the beach. Do the 2 go together, Duncan Berry?
Oh, yeah, like peanut butter and jelly.
Duncan Berry is with the Cascade Head Biosphere Collaborative. Art on the Beach, July 4th. What happens with Art on the Beach?
Well, most of us just walk on the beach. We look at it as a canvas for art. And so what we do is we take rakes and big drawing tools, and we do 100-yard long, that's a football field, size graphics that talk about the place we live in and connect people to the ocean.
But art is supposed to be in churches, museums, cathedrals, on the beach?
I think art belongs everywhere, enriches our lives, right? We like to talk about it being lower in our bodies, right? And so we overuse our heads, and so art allows us to go into our heart and into our gut about, issues that otherwise we're just thinking about. And we think it's a way to communicate to people that really moves them. They're walking down the beach and they go, what is that 100-yard-long octopus? What do you mean Interdependence Day? Tell me about that.
So the artwork, the art piece, the canvas goes up, is done on the 4th of July.
4th of July, yeah. We like to talk about, independence from the crown hundreds of years ago, but we also like to talk about interdependence. The ocean itself is, one of the reasons we live here. But two, it has a lot of ways that we're connected. Breathing is a good one that produces 70% of the oxygen we breathe. It creates the weather patterns that give us rain, and how important is water. So we want to talk about interdependence as much as independence on July 4th.
The event takes place on the beach in front of Chinook Winds Casino Resort. It has the backdrop of the Cascade Head. What a beautiful sight to start out with.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That and we're on the shores of the Marine Reserve, the Cascade Head Marine Reserve. So this is a place where we've said, let the creatures rest for a little while and see how well they come back and how healthy they can be if they're not being predated on all the time. Yeah.
The Cascade Head Scenic Research Area is the Biosphere. It was set up how and how long does it continue?
Yeah, so the Cascade Head Biosphere region was actually established back in 1976. It was the brainchild of two unlikely people. One was Leonid Brezhnev, who was the head of the Soviet Union, and Richard Nixon, who you'll remember. And they got together and said, we should honor places that have great biological value, but also have people living in them. People belong there. This is our natural habitat as well. How they live there needs examining, and so they provide 17 sustainable development goals and a whole format for a community. If they want to participate in the Man and Biosphere program with the UN, they give us a platform for making this a better place to live, work, and play.
How does one become involved?
Oh my gosh, there's so many ways. Cascadehead.org. Log in there, take a look at what we're doing, and then we run on volunteers. We're a rocket ship that's fueled by volunteers. So there's a volunteer section in there. Contact us. We'll talk to you about how you can get involved, things that you are interested in, as well as what we need in the Biosphere. And yeah, we're propelled by you. So.
There are a number of biospheres all over the world, but not all of that many in the U.S., correct?
Yeah, exactly. So there's over 600 worldwide. And again, these are places where people are living in sensitive and beautiful places. In Costa Rica, it's the number one contributor to their GNP. Here, you're lucky if you can find somebody that knows that we have them. I think that's a lot because we believe in our national parks, but these are very different than national parks. So there are, I think 28 nationally, and we are the only one in Oregon. So it's something very special that Oregonians can take pride in.
So come walk the canvas or beside the canvas or on the canvas and enjoy the Cascade Head Biosphere Collaboration event this weekend. It is on the 4th of July. What time should people look forward to being down here?
So we're going to get down quite early. The tide waits for no man or woman, so it's a low tide at 8:30, and so that's the prime time to come down, grab a cup of coffee, come see us on the beach. We'll be there until about 10:30.
It truly is better at the beach. And we have a number of events forthcoming in the Greater Lincoln City community. July 8th, the Bacon and Brew Festival at Chinook Winds Casino Resort, a fundraiser for a host of nonprofits in the Greater Lincoln City community. July 8th, the annual Ocean Edge 5K run sponsored by the Lincoln City Parks and Rec. On the 15th of July, we're all going to go to Newburgh and celebrate Ed Johan. Ed is a former city councilman here in Lincoln City, but more importantly, celebrating his 100th birthday, he's a Pearl Harbor survivor. On the 15th, the Righteous Brothers come to Chinook Winds Casino Resort. On the 16th, it's jazz out at Beechcrest Brewing. And in August, I'd like to remind everybody, the Sandcastle Building Contest, sponsored by Moe's, down on Southwest 51st Street in the Bay Area of Lincoln City. Lots of events for you, your family, your friends in and around Lincoln City.
You've been listening to The Double R Show. Join Roger and Paul Robertson as they explore everything about North Lincoln County. The Double R Show, produced by Always Productions and hosted by Roger Robertson. Have a story? Email contact@alwaysproductions.com or call 458-201-3039. For The Double R Show, I'm Jana Grahn.